Will you please welcome Mr. George Michael? Put it right in.
Yeah, right.
Well, thanks for coming, George. You like the set tonight?
No, it's not bad, not bad.
This looks like how I imagine David Bowie's toilet would probably look. Yeah. Anyway, let's. I was just talking about the single there, and for those people who might not have heard it yet or might have not listened to it very closely, tell us what it's actually about.
Those who might not have heard it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's heard it ever.
When can it actually be played? It's before 6 in the morning and after 9.
I think it's before 6 in the morning and after 9. Yeah, and I'm always in bed by 9, and I never get up before 6. No, I literally have not heard it on the radio. I've not heard it anywhere actually, apart from my living room, because I play my own records all the time.
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
But no, I don't think anyone would have heard it. You want to know what it's about?
Yeah.
I never really like. Obviously, in this case is slightly different, but normally I like to let people make their own interpretations. The governing bodies, as it were, seem to think that people's own interpretations may be too dangerous. I think the song is really, in its own way, it has quite a moral stance to it. I mean, BBC decision, though.
Because the BBC always insists that they don't ban records anyway.
Of course, yes, they just minimise the play, don't they?
Which means they don't play it at all, basically.
Of course, we all listen to Radio 1 after 9 o'clock, you know.
I listen to it all day. I have it on all day solid. I just don't do anything else. I often don't go out because I'm listening to it. You know, let me go back a bit, because I know you've covered all the Wham area quite a lot in interviews and things like that, but I still like to talk about some of it. Mm-hmm. What made you actually want to be in a band in the first place?
Well, I didn't originally think of being in a band. I think originally I wanted just to be. I have to say this is parallel with wanting to be a musician, but I wanted to be a star. I think there is no such thing as a real reluctant star. I've never met anybody that was a reluctant star. You know, I mean, you get to a certain stage and you have to have done it yourself. Stars are almost always people that want to make up for their own weaknesses somehow by being loved by the general public, and I'm no exception to that. As a child, I think I really wanted to be loved by the public. I don't know why, but it was an ego satisfaction thing, and that was the initial push. And then as I got older, I started really appreciating music. So.
Because initially, though, when Wham started, it seemed like Andrew was the one that really didn't mind accepting or admitting to the fact that he wanted to be up there. And you were kind of hiding behind him a bit, and then you came out of your shell more, didn't you?
Well, I think really right up until the time that Wham became a working outfit, I really wasn't. I was a very confident individual, but I wasn't confident to the degree that I could. I was convinced I was going to be a big star or anything. I was convinced I would be successful as a musician, as a writer. Because I was writing from very early on, I was always convinced that the material I was writing, someone else would want to make some money out of, basically. I was waiting to be discovered and exploited, you know.
You had a lot of confidence in yourself, didn't you?
Well, I did, yeah. I was really cocky from the musical point of view. As a person, and in the idea of being a star, I really didn't know quite how I was going to do it. I thought I would just have to kind of wing it, you know, which I did for quite a while.
So when did it hit you, then, that you would be a big star, that you were going to make it big in your own right?
I think having established that Wham was going to be a successful group with the first couple of singles, I think that it really dawned on me probably after about 6 or 8 months that there was something really big to come out of it. I'd never really seen stardom above Top of the Pops, you know.
Was it fun doing Top of the Pops the first few times?
First few times, I remember that feeling really, well, the first time especially, I remember the feeling really, really well of standing there and just thinking, Christ, you know, I've wanted to do this since I was like 6 years old. I've watched people doing this, and I'm actually here. Well, the first thing was looking around me and seeing how crummy the studio was. But I didn't actually mind, you know, once I was actually up there. I think it showed in the first performance that Andrew and I did with the two girls that we'd been waiting for a long time, you know. It kind of all came out in that performance.
Because I remember seeing it, it looked like there were just a couple of people who'd been in the audience who were dragged out to start dancing in the centre, didn't it?
Well, I wouldn't be quite so rude to them as that, no. But you're probably right.
When was, what you were talking about your early songwriting, what was the first song you ever wrote?
The very first song I ever wrote, actually the very first song I ever wrote was when I was about 6 or 7 years old.
How old were you when you wrote Careless Whispers then?
I was 17 when I wrote
17
Careless
when you
Whisper. Yeah.
Because a lot of your songs like that, they deal with like the breakup of relationships. And did you have much experience to draw on? Were you just sort of going from soap operas? Or?
One of the things about Careless Whisper, what was that?
Well, it's got a kind of dynasty theme, doesn't it? A lot of the stuff was very much like, you know, big love affair and breaking up and the guilt and the heartache afterwards. Like you know, Smokey Robinson's songs are the same sort of thing. But I wondered whether you'd actually lived through any of that, or whether you just got it from TV. And
well, I think it was one of the reasons that I can't actually relate to Careless Whisper myself as well as a lot of other people seem to, because it is obviously still the one that people come up to me and say, oh, Careless Whisper, you know. It's very frightening actually to think that that's the song that people refer to, and it's like 7 years old now. It's like, have I not written anything in 7 years?
Yeah.
You know? But the reason I don't feel the way about it that some other people do is that it was a very precocious lyric. It came probably, you know, because I said I didn't really mean it.
It's a lovely pop song, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's brought in the actors, you know.
I'm sure it has.
Ever since.
You know, I was watching some tapes of like early performances, and I was looking at you on stage touring with Wham, and when you did the Tube and things like that. And you do look totally different in terms of your attitude. You really are like a kind of lad going for it in a big way. Very different. I mean, I
think people tend. Some of the things I often look at people's different views on my career to date and views of me as a person at the moment, and sometimes I have to remind myself when I'm feeling extremely hurt by things I read or hear that I am 23 and I am still making a lot of mistakes, and God knows I've made some really bad mistakes the last 3 or 4 years. There are certainly parts of my career which I find very hard to watch or to listen to, but I do feel that people are very they're very unwilling to accept that I am still learning, and that I don't really expect to be totally comfortable with my career for a few years to come, you know.
Because you really had to grow up in public, haven't you? It's all been...
Yeah, well, I still am, you know, I still am, and people do tend to forget that, you know.
What things in particular do you really regret?
Well, there's quite a few, actually. I mean, I look at videos such as Wake Me Up Before You Go. Snigger, snigger, you know. I mean, it's like it
wasn't that
worked.
bad,
I mean, it
George,
worked. I mean, as a video, it worked, and
it sold a few, didn't it?
Again, it sold a few. No, I'm not talking about the record here. I'm very proud of that record as a pop song. But looking at the presentation of it, Andrew and I like camping it up like crazy. I look at it and it's not really me. I mean, I can't believe it was me then either. It's certainly not me now.
So quite a lot of criticism towards the end of Wham. People were saying, oh, he was just living off your talent and like living in the shadow of you. Were you very conscious of that?
The thing was, we were having good fun. We were winding people up. The press loved the idea of the two separate entities and working them against each other, and sometimes, you know, making out that we were pals, and sometimes making out we were enemies. We just laughed our way through the whole thing, and when it came to an end, it was simply because musically I had actually had enough, and that I understood that from a musical point of view things were going to go downhill because I was no longer, well, neither of us were teenagers anymore, and we were both getting a lot older mentally than perhaps we would have done in 3 or 4 years of like a normal life. But I felt, especially at that time, I was going through a bit of a hard time, and I felt already about 50, you know, and I thought this is going to be a bit of a joke. But there was never any question that we would finish the group before its a normal lifespan, because it was not a musical entity. It was an image entity. It was a group that was based around an image and music, but that one wouldn't work without the other. And the image had to be two young guys, you know, having a good laugh, having a good time. And when that became boring for us, it was soon going to become boring for other people. So.
Not only boring though, but was it also that the stuff you were writing and the attitude you were taking was no longer suited to that image?
Well, it was that. It was also, it was becoming slightly more mature, and also I found it incredibly difficult to write for the group image when I was writing much more personal lyrics, and it just seemed strange to have me singing such personal lyrics ahead of this two-man group. Yeah. You know, there were lots of reasons for us splitting, but none of them were to do with our relationship, which was what was the best part of it in one sense, and was also the hardest part to see chipped away at by press and by people all around us, because it wasn't just press. Everybody was kind of jealous of Andrew, because Andrew seemed like someone who'd become rich and famous and not really done much for it, and he'd be the first to admit to that. But you know, the only real person I think that had a right to complain about that, if anybody, would have been me, and I was not going to complain about it because it didn't worry me, and you know, he was still one of my best friends. So when it came to an end, to have people all around us saying, yeah, well, you know, you'd had enough of him, hadn't you, George?
Yeah.
And it was very grating.
A bit strange, didn't it? You know, you got back together again recently to play an AIDS concert, didn't you? Benefit. Do you think you'd get back together to perform for any other reasons?
I'd love to. I'd love to do another Wham gig in a couple of years' time.
Well, like the final one, that'd be.
Yeah, it would be wonderful. It would be absolutely brilliant. I mean, there are a lot of those songs when we were playing during the final last year. I remember thinking, the real sad thing about it was there were some of those songs that I would never play again.
Yeah.
You know, and it would be nice to think I will be able to play them with Andrew again. Yeah.
Also, it was a great atmosphere that day.
It was amazing. I've never felt anything like it. It was just so fantastic to see that an awful lot of the people that were there because Wham represented that part of their youth to them, you know, and they could see something was coming to an end, and that was it was really moving, you know, for me.
It was. I enjoyed it. I wasn't there 'cause it represented part of my youth. I was there because I had a scarf.
I saw you actually. Yeah.
You recognised me, didn't you? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I was the one at the back of Wembley Stadium.
You were the one that spat at me.
Especially with the new single.
Yeah.
You've always projected a very sexy, sexual sort of image. Do you think
I
you're...
would kind of disagree there.
Would you disagree?
Well, I suppose so. Maybe it was sexy to some people. I think it was incredibly asexual, really. I think it was, someone described the same situation in another group, that it's not really a great deal of fun being in your 20s and being sex idol to thousands of virgins.
So you don't see yourself as a particularly sexy person then?
I don't see myself as a bit why I should be particularly sexy to virgins. I'm not saying I don't see. I mean, who considers? I mean, I've met a few people that consider themselves to be very sexy, but you know, I don't think there are many people that do.
Yeah, you were talking about 13-year-old virgins. When did you lose your virginity?
You mean you haven't really... I mean, come on,
read the
this was in the Sun about 2 years ago.
You had your virginity when you were 12, didn't you? You lost your virginity.
Yeah, I actually was closer to 13, you know, I was really pushing it there. 12. I was trying to make myself a little bit more macho, you know, 12.
I don't think I could walk when I was 13, never mind...
I couldn't walk for a couple of weeks afterwards. No, actually, it was one of those horrifically embarrassing early experiences, and as I've said before, nothing happened for years after. I was terrified for years afterwards. But it was just one of those those chance meetings, and actually I looked a lot older than I was. I was actually this height. I'm just under 6 foot, and I was this height when I was about 15 and a half. So at 12, even at 12, I think I must have been about 5'10". Well, no, maybe not that. It's quite tall for 12, isn't it? 5'10".
I think it's good.
Stop trying to rewrite history, George. I was tall anyway. I looked older. I probably looked about 14 or 15, and the girl in question was definitely that age.
But you didn't enjoy it that much. It was not.
It was horrific.
But I think maybe most people's first time probably is, though, don't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, anybody who tells you any different is almost certainly lying. You know, unless they've been wandering around with their Joy of Sex book since I was 8. You know?
God bless Alex Comfort, eh? Yeah. I read that you went through a fairly promiscuous period for a while when Wham was kind of just hitting it big. I mean, did you enjoy that?
Well, I was enjoying a certain amount of the day, I suppose.
Do you get annoyed that people like me...
Who told you that, Jonathan?
I've been talking. Do you get annoyed that people like me ask you questions about your sex life?
Yeah, very.
It's a bit probing, isn't it?
No, I get annoyed when people go past a certain point, you know. But obviously, it's the kind of thing. There are certain questions that you're asked in public that you expect to be asked, really.
Because
especially when you release singles called "I Want Your Sex," you know, it's kind of lining yourself up in a way.
It is leading up to it, really, isn't it? Because there's one group of people who are particularly obsessed with your sex life, and that's like the tabloids. The Sun, the Star. I've read some great stories in those, which are probably not many of them are true. There was one about a story that you threw up over a blonde in a nightclub. Did that happen?
I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about that because I'm currently in litigation with the aforementioned paper.
It's the Sun,
of course it's not true, no.
What about the one about, there was one I saw that said George Michael's been seen getting a fitting for a dress?
I know, I heard that one. I was abroad somewhere. I wasn't abroad somewhere. I was abroad somewhere. And
that's probably how the story started, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I was on holiday, and somebody read me this clipping on the phone. It started off about, you know, we've received word that George has taken the plunge, and it was all full of, you know, wonderful puns. And I waited for it said about me going for a fitting for a dress, and I was waiting on the end of this line for the punchline. I waited. There was this kind of silence at the end of the phone. I said, and they said, that's it. It's just there. It was like a statement of fact that I had gone for a fitting for a dress, and I had my second fitting in a couple of weeks' time or something.
Is it a nice dress?
I don't know what colour it was or whatever. I hope it was off the shoulder.
I hope it was. It's pretty little goatee hair now, wasn't it? do you still do interviews for any of the tabloids like that?
I haven't. That's something that it's so frustrating, because you can't act upon everything you read in the papers, but every time you will see a quote from George Michael, every time you will see an inverted commas quote from George Michael, it will be something that they have decided to write, because I have not I've not spoken to any member of the tabloid press since April 1985, which is like, that's 2 years of silence now, and everything that you see is backed up with George says. But a great
favourite there's now is a friend of George.
A friend,
says.
yeah, an insider.
Yeah, because there was one last week in The Sun saying that you were definitely getting married, I think last weekend, to your girlfriend Kathy.
Yeah.
I mean, was that true? Did you get married last weekend?
Well, not unless I wasn't invited, you know. I'm not planning on getting married now. I don't understand where that came from. I read that story on the front page.
Probably your friend said, that's what it was.
Oh yeah, it was one of my friends, one of my better friends, yeah.
Do you think they can do you much damage in your career, I mean, by the stories they make up?
Yeah, they can. Obviously they can do a certain amount of damage. I've got to the point where I've decided, because just about everything that's written about me has a little side comment to it these days, or a vicious angle. We had to experience it yet.
How much are you worth, George?
I don't know. To tell you the truth, I honestly don't know. I know I'm not worth anything like as much as people think I'm worth, because, as I said, I didn't really take advantage. I haven't taken advantage of my career financially so far. I'm worth an awful lot. I would be perfectly happy. Actually, I would have been perfectly happy to stay at the financial level I was at, anything, you know, from, say, 2.5 years ago. But I'm very wealthy for a 23-year-old, that's for sure. But what that money means to me is that I'm very free. You know, I have the freedom to go where I like and do what I like, and that's all it can really buy me. I don't see that it can buy me any more. I may get richer, I may not, but I certainly couldn't be any better off than I am now, even if I had 10 times as much money.
So does money lose its meaning for you then? Have you kind of lost
Money lost its meaning for me a long time ago. Money lost its meaning for me as long as the moment I knew I had security. I'm really not a very financial person at all, in that I don't do things for money. I think it would be pretty fair to say that of the people that were introduced to the British public in 1984, of that big year, you're talking about 5 major bands. I'm actually still the only person who's not left the country for any financial reasons.
Why aren't you a tax exile?
Because, as I say, money doesn't mean enough to me to tell me where I'm going to wake up in the morning, you know, and people see me as being very kind of, they see me as representing success and wealth, but the wealth part of it, I mean, I wanted to be a star desperately. I never desperately wanted to be rich, and I'm certainly not going to complain about the money that's come my way, but it really isn't a major part of my thinking. You know, I can say it with my hand on my heart.
I believe you anyway.
Hand on my bank account.
Listen, I mean, it is quite cheeky, but I mean, it's not. I wouldn't have thought it was strong enough to be banned, really.
No, exactly. It's not exactly.
And the message is pretty clear. I mean, it's all up there for everyone to see at the end, isn't it?
It's true. I feel kind of embarrassed about all the publicity, because I think it makes people ready for something a lot raunchier, and I didn't try and do something that was going to get banned. I really tried to make this as close to the you know, I tried to get it real borderline. And again, the only thing I wasn't sure about was Top of the Pops, but I think it really is we actually had it looked at by the British Film Board, and they gave it a 15 rating, which makes quite a mockery of this whole thing.
The fact that it's been banned from TV,
Yeah.
I mean, AIDS has now prompted people to start examining relationships a bit more closely perhaps than they did before. Monogamy now is fairly hip, isn't it? I mean, would you have written a song praising monogamy if it wasn't for AIDS, do you think?
I don't know, it didn't really occur to me before. I probably wouldn't have introduced the idea of monogamy into the video and the record a year ago, because I wouldn't have seen it as a necessity, and I've always thought that as it's just a personal point of view.
How frightened are you personally by AIDS? Have you actually had an AIDS test?
No, I haven't, no.
Would you have one?
I think I'd have one if I had been, I think it's fairly safe to say that the period in which I was, let's say, unselective, it was a long way back, and it was in London at a time when I don't think it's not really a genuine threat. If I had been in that same period of time, because I remember actually, to be perfectly honest, when I first went to New York, I was terrified of herpes.
Yeah.
I remember coming home.
Herpes seems quite friendly now, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? It's a bit like you know, having flu or something.
Yeah. Because you've got a cold now, haven't you?
Because I didn't actually use that to introduce.
There was a good link in there.
It was a good link.
I just thought your voice was sexy today.
Yeah, I know. My voice is very deep today. It's because I have a cold. It's not because I'm trying to play up this macho image, you know. But no, I was terrified of herpes. I remember coming back from New York. I actually did go. My family are in the audience now. I actually went to the doctor. I went to the doctor with Andrew when I came back from New York the first time, because I was terrified about that. But even that was just from one stray night in New York, and I was terrified, you know. So I mean, that was 5 years ago. I've never played the field in America or abroad, actually, and so I'm not really worried. If I had been basically screwing around when I've been travelling, I think I would have had a test by now. You know, I think you can make your own judgment as to those things.
Did you used to use a condom when you were sort of unselective, or do you use one now? and what brand? I don't know if I should answer that question. All right, I'll answer the question. Yes, I do. Yes. He said, yes, I do. He said, I'm not ashamed of it. Do you want to show me how to put one on afterwards?
Actually, no, have you seen those you know those Jiffy things?
Yeah.
You know the Jiffy
They come like a cigarette pack thing.
I know, I mean, you could do without. I tell you, I mean, I think they're fun because they've made them like cigarette boxes and everything. And you see people like in clubs staring at them like, you know. But the worst thing, have you seen the diagrams on the inside?
No, I haven't.
Look, if you ever get a Jiffy thing, look at the third diagram. It's enough to put you off. It's enough to put you off. It's disgusting.
I think it worries me in the cigarette packs. I think people get them out and start rolling their own down there. So it won't light. Let me just ask you a little bit about your future. You're thinking of moving into acting, aren't you? In a few years' time.
Well, I wasn't really thinking about it, no.
I thought you were hoping to go that way. I thought you were
well, I
looking
mean,
for
people
parts.
send me scripts of things. The latest one I've had is I've been offered the role of a Greek Jewish revolutionary. That's serious, it's the truth, you know. And
sounds tailor-made for you.
It does, doesn't it, really?
Only could be a moderate revolutionary. That's
yeah. I've not been sent anything. I've not been sent anything that's vaguely tempting yet. There are the kind of films that I would like to be in are not the kind of films that people see me in. Everyone sees me playing something that's very kind of big budget and a vehicle for my career, and I don't believe I need a vehicle for my career. I think my career has got to depend on my music, and I think film careers, if they're not extremely carefully planned and if they're not extremely credible, can work against your musical career, even if you're making great music, and I don't want to take that risk. You know, I've got lots more music to make. I've got a long way to go, and I don't want to hinder it by trying to do too much too soon. You know, 23 years old, I think I can afford to wait a few years.
I think you probably can as well. Listen, thanks for coming in and showing us a video, and thanks for talking to us. Thank you, George Michael.
Thank you.